Well, hi, Dr. Nicci Dowd. I'm so happy to have you again on my Sharing the Good with Dr. Denise Ball podcast. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ball. It is great, great, great to be here. I had so much fun the last time we were together, so I was so excited when you invited me back. So
Oh,
thank you.
you are so welcome. Well, today we're talking about a topic that is near and dear to both of us, and that is joy in the work. This is episode two, and the importance that we have for making room for joy. When we're talking about educational settings, environments, our teachers, and our school leaders. I'm honored to be the host of this conversation today. I'm honored to have you as my dear friend and colleague and
Yes,
fellow researcher. Can
yes.
we just say a shout out to the University of Oxford? Was that not amazing?
Oh, that was so much fun. That was so
So
much.
the
That was
Oxford
so
Symposia team, thank you for having Nikki and I and Dr. Joy Roberts. Last month we had a great time in Oxford sharing our research. So super excited. Well, all right. Well, today we are continuing the Joy in the Work series, a conversation that feels especially important, Nikki, as we're welcoming our educators, our faculty, staff, school leaders and those who prepare and support educators to another school year. So, in episode one,
fun.
Dr. Christina Mendez Hall joined me for a conversation about leading with joy. And she spoke about the idea that perhaps joy does not have to be something we wait to experience,
Yeah,
but it should be one of the ways we intentionally enter our work. And so, with that, I think it's a natural scaffolding to the conversation to look at making room for joy.
Mhm.
So, as someone with a perspective who works alongside educators and school leaders, helping prepare, develop, encourage, and support the people who serve our schools at Marymount University, in your adjunct consulting for ADAC, and the many roles in which you serve. Um, Thank you for being here. So, I have an opening question for you.
Yes.
When we talk about joy, I want to begin with asking, where are you finding joy in the work right now?
Oh, that is just a great question. So right now, I'm finding joy in the opportunity to work alongside educators and really help them think differently about
Mm,
learners. I've been doing a lot of professional learning around inclusion, so
mm,
professional learning training really around inclusion and universal design for learning, right?
yeah.
And one of the things that really brings me joy is just watching that moment when an educator shifts from thinking, what is wrong with this student to asking what might be getting in the way of this student's
Mm,
learning and what can I change, right? And
that's
so that shift is
beautiful.
powerful. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
right. And you think
Oh,
about it, that shift is so powerful because it really changes how we see children.
mm.
So yeah,
I
yeah,
love that. And what a blessing you are to not only help shape the minds and hearts of those who are going into education, but those who are in the classrooms who might need to be that have that reminder,
right.
and the tools of,
And tools, yes.
so man, that's exciting. Thank you. So when
Yeah,
we're looking at, you have spent the summer collaborating with a lot of educators, consulting with ADAC, and when we're seeing, what are you seeing and hearing from educators and leaders you work with that is giving them hope right now? We said that, I read all these things that we don't really want to look at COVID and the
right.
data. And, I'm not one of those people. I think that we have to acknowledge it, that our teachers in the classroom who were teaching during COVID, we acknowledge it and we say, good job, faithful
Yeah,
servant. Now let's move on. But we don't ignore it. We don't maybe probably take it out of the conversation. But
yeah.
they're real things. So I talk with teachers who say, I'm still trying to get back to that
Right, yeah.
pre-COVID joy. And I'm like, well, let's do it together, So what are you hearing in the field? Like, what are some things that are giving teachers joy right now and hope?
Yeah, and hope. when I talk with the teachers, and really what gives me hope, right, is that
Mm,
educators, they really do want to reach their students.
yeah.
When they are given that space and the tools, right, and the opportunity to really reflect, they are just incredibly thoughtful,
Mhm.
just really about their practice. And I've watched educators leave professional learning already thinking about a particular student and saying, I could do this differently tomorrow. And so that just gives me tremendous hope because, their hope is reflective, right, in their practices and walking out of those professional learnings. Like, I'm doing this tomorrow, and can you come back and,
I love
just a
that.
follow up, just so you can see what we've done. So yeah. That gives me hope. Yeah.
That is so exciting. And I love that we're getting ready. We're welcoming our students back to the Marymount campus.
Right,
And now we
exactly.
can take some of these strategies and some of these experiences into the classroom conversation. Um, We're on a research team and a 2027 research team headed back to Oxford in the spring and we're talking about school culture. So when we talk about joy in the work, we talk about making room for joy, we cannot not do so
Mhm,
without talking about school culture. So
mhm,
we know that in finding joy, we actually also have to look at the environments that we
mhm,
create as school leaders and as teachers for that joy to be observed and to grow.
mhm,
So
mhm.
we educators are carrying a great deal with them right now with what's going on maybe in their home lives. They might be carrying additional coursework, um, the impact of a societal lens of what the world is thinking about educators right now, whatever it may be, they're carrying a lot.
Hmm.
And joy cannot become one more thing we ask
Right.
them to add to their list.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
from your perspective,
Mhm,
what conditions help educators not only experience joy and belonging and purpose, but to
mhm.
experience that professional growth on their school campuses? Do you have any like conditions that you can, strategies or recommendations for our school leaders that could say, when you're preparing to welcome back your faculty and staff next week, think about this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's another great question. And I don't think when we're talking about joy, I don't think we can tell educators to just find joy without examining those conditions in which we're asking them to work. Right. As you're
Beautiful.
saying, like
Yeah.
not just another thing. Joy can't become another responsibility that we put on the teachers. And so when we
Mm.
talk about conditions. We're talking about belonging, we're talking about
Mm.
trust, we're talking about voice, and we're talking about support. We're talking about the permission to really learn and to make mistakes, right?
I
The
love
permission
that.
to have an environment where there is this academic humility, right? So,
Mm.
so educators really need to they need to feel the same things that we want our students to feel, that they belong and that they are valued and that their strengths are recognized and that they have some agency in their learning. We talk about creating those conditions for our children, our students,
Mm.
but our adults, our teachers need them too, and I think when we think about UDL, right? UDL
Hmm.
has influenced the way I think about professional learning. If
Mm.
we believe learner variability is predictable for our students, then we really have to recognize that it exists among adults too. So, again, when we're
Absolutely.
right? And
Yeah.
so when we're talking about those conditions, professional learning, for one, when you're going back to the belonging, the trust, the voice, and the support, right? So professional learning shouldn't just assume that every educator needs the same thing in the same way and at the same time. So, just considering some of those conditions. Yeah.
Nikki, I think that's so important. I love when I hear that school leaders are surveying their teachers,
Hmm.
or we have Welcome Back Week across the nation next week, right? For many schools across the states. And, you know, a simple exit slip with a sticky note, right? Like, what's one thing you hope to learn? Well,
Right,
how
yeah.
can I support you this year? We're not asking our school leaders to create one more mechanism, like one more thing, because they're overburdened too, but we have to seek input from our educators.
Right.
And just like you said, we have to know how can I best serve you, Nikki, is not the same way I can best serve Jen, you know?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and it could be different, and that's okay, and that's the beauty of having us all together to teach the students place in our care. So I want to broaden the conversation a little bit beyond the K-12 school building.
Okay.
You have the privilege of working with educators and school leaders as they continue to learn and grow. As a professor, as an assistant professor, you mentor, you coach, you work with these leaders. Um, what responsibility do those of us who prepare and support educators, that could be at the post-secondary level on a university
Mhm.
or at a school system level or diocesan level,
Mhm.
what responsibility do we have for helping our educators recognize and sustain joy in the work? Where's the
Oh,
responsibility lie? Do we engage in the conversation? Do we throw it out there and is it necessary? Or do we just hope it happens? Where's the responsibility do you think lies?
yeah, I think we have just enormous responsibility because we aren't just preparing educators to teach, right? We're really helping shape how they understand themselves,
Mm.
as educators and how they understand the students, the children they serve. And so, one thing I really want educators to understand, in terms of just the responsibility or what have you, is that the barriers um, that we see are not necessarily located within the learner, right?
Mm.
So when a student struggles, our first response shouldn't always be, what's wrong with this child? We should be asking, what's happening in the environment, what barrier might exist there, and what is within my power to change, right? And so, I
Mm.
think there's, going back to, the philosophy of joy, and in terms of that responsibility, I think, there is actually joy, in that it moves us away from helplessness, all of us, instead of thinking, I can't reach this student, we begin thinking, there may be, another way. So the responsibility just really lies within all of us, right?
I love it. So there is a responsibility for us to love each other enough to enter the difficult conversation and to
Yes.
seek to understand.
Yes.
Um, I wonder sometimes, Nikki, if whether part of our responsibility is not simply creating the spaces where educators can come together,
Hmm.
but opportunities where they can share the learning, wrestle with problems of practice. How are we having those conversations? Um, make time to laugh together,
Yes. Yeah.
encourage one another, and remember they're not alone in doing this work. Um, what can we do differently or more intentionally to create the kind of spaces where joy is fostered and continue to be developed and explored?
Yes, well, for one, when we're thinking about, those spaces, right? And the belongingness and that support and the trust and the voice, it's particularly as it relates to professional learning. I go back to professional learning, right?
Hmm.
I think we have to stop designing professional learning experiences around um, giving educators more information. To your point,
So good.
yeah, to your point, sometimes they need that space to laugh, to think, to
Yes.
talk, to experience, reflect, and learn from one another. Again, it goes back to just creating a space for that academic humility. Everyone doesn't, no one
Love
knows
that.
everything,
That's
right?
it.
Yeah, no one knows everything. So being able to say, I don't know, I didn't know that, how can I learn more about this? So yeah, that's
I love that. I think that we have an opportunity when we welcome back our teachers
yes,
to just say to them,
yes,
what environment do you want this year?
yeah.
And if it's an environment where wonder
Mhm.
thrives and curiosity is the norm, and
Yes.
academic humility,
Yeah.
right? I
Yes.
mean, that's so powerful. And if we can engage our educators in that and we can all agree to it, that's so powerful for students of all ages,
Of
right?
all right. And then that's where that sense of community is fostered, is created,
Yes.
fostered. Yes. Yes.
Oh, you always excite me, Nicci Dowd. Um,
Well, well, Denise, you get me excited, so I'm vibing off of you.
let's go. So,
Let's go. Yes.
teamwork, activate. So,
Yes.
so, when we talk about joy, of course, we know this, but I want to just say it. When we talk about joy in the work, and we talk about joy on our school campuses, it doesn't mean that their obstacles are not going to come. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a barriers. So I'm going to acknowledge that yes,
Right.
joy does not mean the absence of challenge, but it,
Right.
it is if we can choose to look through a framework of joy and we can choose to armor up in joy,
Mm,
then we're going to be able to engage with the difficult situations, student, parent, colleague. We're going to be able to walk through the challenging conversations, the personnel issues, the family concerns, and all the competing demands that the world throws at us. If we can use that lens of joy, we can jump off that chaos wheel, and just lean in and feel good about
mm.
serving others in education. Um, what would you say, Nicci, to the educator or school leader beginning the school year with hope, but also carrying some heaviness?
Mm.
You have any wisdom nugget?
Yeah, I would first say, we again to your point, we have to make room um for both things, to be true. You can love this work and still find it difficult.
Mm,
Okay. And you can be deeply committed to the children, to your students, and still be tired. So I would
mm,
encourage educators not to measure the value of their work, only by the big outcomes. Sometimes the evidence
very
that
good.
you're making a difference is small. Sometimes the evidence, that you're making a difference is small. Yeah. And it's the student who participates, when they usually don't, right? It's the child who finally takes a risk.
Yeah.
It's the family who feels hurt. It's realizing that
Mm,
you changed, what you changed made learning more accessible for one student, and
mm.
again, just sometimes just making room for joy means learning to notice those moments.
I
Yeah.
love that. And that's such wisdom and wisdom from a seasoned educator. That's what that is right there. Before we close, Nikki, I want to try something that might become another tradition in this series.
Okay.
I'm always learning. I am always slaying in humility, academic humility. This school year, I want you to finish the sentence. This
Mhm.
school year, I'm going to intentionally make room for joy by dot dot dot.
Okay, so by slowing down enough to notice the
Mm,
impact of the work, not just the amount of work, um, that still needs
mm,
to be done. Yeah, and
mm.
celebrating those small moments when an educator or a student begins to see themselves differently.
I love that, Nikki. This school year, I'm going to intentionally make room for joy by also slowing down. That's one of my mantras. Um, Taking on less so I can serve more
Ooh, ooh.
and be there for my friends and um, colleagues and those who the Lord has placed on my heart. I might share a praise and worship song, I might share a scripture, but really trying to intentionally make room for joy in my life by tapping
Mhm.
into the Holy Spirit and streaming and just saying, I see you, Nikki, and I'm so honored and privileged to be your friend and colleague and trying to serve the wonderful world of education right alongside you.
Me too. Oh my gosh.
Um,
I'm so honored to be your friend and colleague too. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, but hey, that's the nice. There is no right or wrong when we're
Okay.
talking about this podcast.
Yeah.
So, um, thank you for that. I
Yeah.
mean, it isn't. This is these conversations that I am so blessed to have on this podcast are what I'd love to see on our campuses.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
taking the moment to say to our colleagues, I see you, man, it's so important. And everyone listening, perhaps that's the question worth answering for yourself as well. You
Hmm.
know, this school year, how are you going to intentionally make room for joy?
Love
So,
that.
Nicci,
Hmm.
um, I want to thank you. And one of the ideas I hope to continue exploring throughout this series is that joy does not require us to pretend that the work is easy. We
Yep.
can acknowledge what is difficult and choose to notice what is good.
Yes. Yes.
Perhaps cultivating joy begins in very, as you mentioned, ordinary places and conversations and the small details. Um, our schools are built through thousands of these seemingly small interactions. That's
Mhm.
where school culture is affected and can blossom when we really train our eyes to see that in the
Yeah.
small details. Um, Nicci, I want to leave you with this final question.
Okay.
What is one good thing happening in education right now that you wish more people knew about?
Ooh, that's a good one. I wish more people knew how many educators are just really quietly doing just extraordinary things
Mm,
every day. I mean, these educators, I mean, I'm not saying this lightly. These educators are truly superheroes. We hear so much
yes.
about what's wrong with education, and there are certainly challenges, right, that we do have to address. But I get to work, like you're saying, I get to work with just amazing
Mm,
educators, including yourself, who are asking those hard questions about their practice, and just learning new ways
mm,
to support themselves, one another, and their students, and then just reconsidering those assumptions, that they've held, and really genuinely, just trying to create learning spaces where every student belongs. And so, the
mm,
work doesn't always make the headlines, but it's happening every day. And that's what
oh,
gives me hope, and that's what, gives me a lot of joy.
oh my gosh, Nikki, for every parent, teacher, school leader, or those who support education listening to this podcast, you are the perfect cheerleader for educators everywhere. Because they are superheroes and they are working hard. The data supports it. Teachers do not go into the profession for a large salary. They
Mhm.
go in to make a difference, to serve others. And so we need to celebrate that as often as we can, so that young people can see education as a worthy profession. Because we're teaching the leaders of today and tomorrow across all industries. And so that is an awesome responsibility and a true privilege. Nikki, you are going to be a regular guest on my podcast. I know it, and I'm so
I love
honored.
it.
You, you are just a blessing and a beacon of light.
Thank you. I
When I
think the
talk
same
about,
for you.
I love you too. So when we talk about joy in the work, you're joy for me, and I'm honored that we'll be working so closely together on multiple projects this year,
Yes,
and
I
we'll
can't wait.
come together with the other researchers working with us for sure to talk about school culture. That'll be a separate series
Okay.
in the spring, and I'm excited about that. But until next time, Nikki, and I know you join me with the whole Sharing the Good community, that we'll keep looking for opportunities to share the good because we know when we can train our eyes to see the good, amazing things can happen.
Right. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, Denise, thank you so much for having me. And it is always a joy for me to just
Um,
be able to get together with you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
oh, you're welcome, and be assured of my prayers.
Yes, thank you, you too. You
Thank
too.